The star system was an unassuming patch of space, its lone sun casting a pale light over a ring of scattered asteroids and a solitary gas giant. Here, amid the quiet cold, two fleets faced one another. On one side, the elder species vessels glided with an elegance that seemed almost supernatural. Their hulls shimmered with a translucent iridescence, pulsing faintly like living things. On the other side, humanity's battleships loomed, hulking giants of metal and firepower, their angular designs stark and unyielding. To the elders, they looked less like ships and more like harbingers of ruin. In the command chamber of the HSS Resolute, humanity's flagship, Admiral Elena Kale observed the alien fleet with a mixture of awe and trepidation. "Organic constructs," she murmured, leaning closer to the holographic display. The ships appeared to breathe, their exteriors undulating softly, as though they were alive. She couldn't help but admire the stark contrast to her own fleet's brutal, mechanical symmetry. Beside her, Ambassador Julian Thorne stood stiffly in his ceremonial uniform, hands clasped behind his back. He was a man of sharp intellect and sharper words, but even he felt the weight of the moment. "They're beautiful," he said, his voice tinged with unease. "Beautiful things can still kill you," Elena replied. "Don't let appearances fool you." The bridge was quiet save for the occasional murmur of officers coordinating the fleet. Outside the viewport, the elder species lead vessel approached, a vast, luminescent sphere that seemed to refract the starlight around it. Communication with the elders had been minimal, their language an intricate web of tones and gestures. Humanity's linguists had worked tirelessly to decode it, and what little they understood painted a picture of an ancient and enigmatic race. As the elder vessel closed the distance, a soft chime indicated an incoming transmission. "It's them," announced Lieutenant Arana, her voice steady but edged with tension. "Patch it through," Thorne ordered. The holographic display flickered, and the elder envoy appeared. It was humanoid but distinctly alien, its form shimmering as though viewed through a heat haze. Its features were fluid, shifting subtly with its speech, a mix of harmonic tones that resonated in the chamber. The translation software struggled for a moment before stabilizing. "Humans," the envoy began, its voice echoing like a choir, "we welcome you to this meeting of minds. Your creations are formidable." The pause was deliberate, and the word formidable carried an undertone that was hard to misinterpret. "Envoy," Thorne replied, stepping forward, "it is an honor to meet you. Humanity comes with open hands, seeking understanding and friendship." His words were carefully chosen, his tone diplomatic. The envoy's shimmering form tilted slightly, an action that might have been curiosity or doubt. "You come with hands open, yet behind you, shadows of war loom large." Its gaze, or what passed for one, drifted to the projection of the human fleet. "Your constructs radiate purpose, but it is not a purpose of peace." Thorne hesitated, searching for a response. Admiral Kale interjected, her voice firm but measured. "Envoy, in our galaxy, peace is not granted, it is preserved. These ships are not weapons of conquest, they are shields for those we protect." The envoy's tone shifted, a subtle ripple of dissonance. "And what is the nature of those you protect? Do they thrive under your shadow, or do they cower?" The question hung in the air like a blade. Kale's jaw tightened, but Thorne raised a hand, signaling her to hold back. "We are here to learn from you," he said, his tone conciliatory. "Humanity has made its share of mistakes, but our strength is not a threat. It is a necessity in a galaxy that often leaves no room for the weak." The envoy regarded him for a long moment, the chamber filled only with the soft hum of the Resolute systems. Finally, it spoke. "We shall observe this necessity of yours. Perhaps it will illuminate your path, or reveal its folly." The transmission ended, leaving a lingering tension in the air. Kale exhaled sharply, turning to Thorne. "Diplomatic, but firm." "Not bad," she said. "Not good either," Thorne replied, his voice low. "They don't trust us. And I can't blame them." The elder fleet began to reposition itself, their movements fluid and deliberate. The humans, by contrast, adjusted with the mechanical precision of their engines, a stark reminder of their respective philosophies. Kale crossed her arms, her gaze fixed on the alien ships. "What worries me isn't their distrust," she said. "It's what happens if they decide to act on it." Thorn glanced at her. Do you think they'd attack us? Kale shook her head. Not directly. But if they see us as a threat to their harmony, they might try to eliminate us before we disrupt their perfect order. She turned to the bridge crew. Maintain combat readiness. I want shields and weapons hot, but do not engage unless provoked. The crew acknowledged her orders, the tension palpable. Outside, the void stretched endlessly, indifferent to the fragile truce between the two fleets. As the hours dragged on, the humans and elders remained in uneasy proximity, their ships orbiting a delicate understanding rather than true cooperation. Kale and Thorn shared the weight of uncertainty, each contemplating the precarious balance they were trying to maintain. Then, without warning, a new signal appeared on the scanners, a faint but distinct distortion at the edge of the system. Kale's eyes narrowed. What is that? Lieutenant Arana worked quickly at her console, her fingers a blur. Unidentified signature. It's massive. And it's closing fast. The bridge erupted into controlled chaos as alarms blared. Thorn stared at the display, his throat dry. Please tell me that's not one of theirs. It's not, Kale said grimly. It's something else. For the first time since the meeting began, the Elder Envoy reached out, its ship transmitting a single unencrypted message to the Resolute. We were not followed, the message read. This presence is unknown to us. Prepare yourselves, humans. Kale exchanged a glance with Thorn, her expression hardening. Looks like we'll have to prove the necessity of our shadows after all. The Resolute's engines roared to life, its battleships forming a defensive line as the alien threat emerged from the void. The elder species watched in silence, their luminescent ships moving cautiously to mirror the human formation. In the heart of the unknown, ancient wisdom and newfound resilience would soon be tested, and the day's purpose would become painfully clear. The alien presence materialized with a terrifying inevitability, emerging from the black void like a jagged scar tearing across the fabric of space. It was immense, its dark hull bristling with angular protrusions that defied any natural symmetry. It moved without hesitation, each shift of its colossal form an assertion of dominance. On the bridge of the HSS Resolute, Admiral Kale leaned over the tactical display, her features set in grim determination. Analysis, she barked, her voice slicing through the tension like a blade. Lieutenant Arana's hands danced over her console. No recognizable energy signature. No known design profile. Whatever this is, it doesn't match anything in our database. She hesitated, then added, it's powering up. Kale didn't wait for clarification. Raise shields. Prepare all weapon systems. No one fires without my command. Across the fleet, battleships sprang to life, their weapon systems glowing faintly as power surged through them. In stark contrast, the elder vessels drifted silently, their ethereal forms flickering with an otherworldly luminescence. A transmission from the lead elder ship crackled onto the Resolute's bridge. Humans, the envoy's voice resonated, calm yet weighted with an undercurrent of urgency. This being is not known to us. Its presence disrupts the harmony of this space. Its intent is clear. Ambassador Thorn stepped forward, his face pale but resolute. And what do you propose? Shall we harmonize with its weapons, or will you finally see the value in ours? The envoy's tone sharpened. Your arrogance blinds you, Ambassador. Strength without wisdom is destruction. Do not presume that your firepower will save you from every storm. Kale cut in, her patience frayed. Then perhaps you'd like to lead the charge, Envoy? Let's see how your harmony fares against something designed to destroy. The silence that followed was broken not by words but by action. The alien vessel moved with startling speed for its size, closing the distance between itself and the human elder formation. A surge of energy rippled across its surface, and moments later, a blinding lance of light erupted from its hull, aimed directly at one of the elder ships. The elder vessel's shields flared, shimmering brilliantly before collapsing under the sheer force of the blast. The ship shattered, its fragments spiraling into the void like glittering shards of glass. A collective gasp rippled through the Resolute's bridge, and Kale's knuckles whitened as she gripped the edge of the console. Thorn turned to her, his voice tight. That's your cue, Admiral. All ships, open fire, Kale commanded, her tone icy with resolve. The human fleet roared to life, volleys of kinetic slugs and plasma lances streaking toward the alien intruder. The alien vessel absorbed the first barrage with minimal damage, its angular hull dispersing energy like a shield of shifting geometry. It retaliated with devastating precision, its beams slicing through the void and narrowly missing another Elder ship. As the battle unfolded, the Elders hesitated, their ships circling cautiously, emitting faint pulses of energy that seemed more like warnings than attacks. On the Resolute, Thorn's frustration boiled over. "They're holding back," he snapped, pacing the bridge. "They're just watching us fight their fight." Kale's gaze remained fixed on the tactical display. "Maybe they're waiting for an opening," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. The envoy's image flickered onto the screen again. "You fight like cornered beasts," it said, its tones filled with equal parts awe and disdain. "Is this the extent of your strategy? To rage against the storm until you exhaust yourselves?" Kale's jaw tightened, but before she could reply, Lieutenant Arana spoke up, her voice edged with alarm. "The alien vessel is adapting, ma'am. It's analyzing our weapons and redirecting energy to counter specific systems." The realization settled like a weight on the bridge. Their adversary wasn't just powerful, it was intelligent, evolving in real time. Thorn turned to the envoy's projection, desperation creeping into his voice. "You have to help us. If we fall, you're next." The envoy tilted its head, the shimmering light of its form growing dimmer, as though it were deep in thought. "Violence is not our way," it said at last. "But nor is surrender. If survival demands compromise, then we shall adapt." Without further explanation, the Elder ships shifted their formation, their translucent exteriors glowing more brightly as they emitted a chorus of harmonic vibrations. The sound resonated across the battlefield, a haunting melody that seemed to ripple through the very fabric of space. The alien vessel hesitated, its movements slowing as if disoriented. Kale seized the opportunity. "Focus fire on its central array," she ordered, her voice cutting through the hum of activity on the bridge. The human fleet responded with precision, their combined firepower striking the alien vessel's core. This time, the impact was noticeable. A section of the alien hull fractured, spewing molten debris into the void. Thorn exhaled, relief flickering across his face. "It's working." But the moment was short-lived. The alien vessel retaliated with renewed ferocity, its beams targeting both human and Elder ships indiscriminately. Another Elder vessel was struck, its organic hull disintegrating in a cascade of light. The envoy's voice returned, strained but resolute. "We see now why you cling to your strength, humans. But strength alone will not suffice. There must be unity." Kale's eyes narrowed. "Then stop preaching and fight." The envoy's form shimmered, and the remaining Elder ships joined the fray in earnest. Their harmonic vibrations shifted, converging into focused beams that struck the alien vessel with precision. Combined with humanity's relentless assault, the tide of the battle began to turn. As the alien ship faltered, Kale allowed herself a brief moment of hope. But deep down, she knew this was only the beginning. The creature was a herald, not an anomaly. Something darker lay beyond the horizon, and it would take more than brute force to face it. Thorn approached her, his expression grim. "We've bought ourselves time, Admiral. But I don't think either of us believes this is over." Kale nodded, her gaze distant. "No, it's not. And when the next storm comes, we'll need more than guns and words to survive it." On the edge of the battlefield, the Elder ships drifted closer, their luminous hulls scarred but still intact. For the first time, Kale thought she saw something in their movements, an acknowledgement, perhaps even respect. She met Thorn's gaze and saw her own determination reflected in his eyes. The fight wasn't over, but they had earned a fragile moment of understanding. Together, they would have to prepare for what came next. The battlefield was a graveyard of wreckage. Jagged pieces of alien metal and the shattered remains of Elder vessels floated aimlessly, casting long shadows against the gas giant's faint glow. In the distance, the alien ship's hulking form still loomed, wounded but unrelenting. Its dark hull absorbed light as if it sought to snuff out the very stars. Admiral Kale stood at the Resolute's command console, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. The human fleet was battered, their formations fractured, and the elder ships, those that remained, drifted uneasily, their organic forms pulsing erratically. The battle had taken its toll, but the alien ship was far from defeated. Ambassador Thorn approached her, his face pale and streaked with exhaustion. "The elders are faltering," he said quietly. "Their envoy hasn't responded to my last transmission." Kale didn't look at him. Her focus was unyielding, her jaw clenched. "They'll respond when they decide they've run out of options. Until then, we hold the line." A sharp chime cut through the tense atmosphere, drawing their attention. Lieutenant Arana's voice broke the silence, tinged with urgency. "Admiral, the alien vessel is reconfiguring. Its energy readings are spiking. It's preparing for a massive discharge." Kale's stomach twisted, but she didn't hesitate. "All ships, evasive maneuvers. Prepare countermeasures and concentrate fire on its weakest points. We can't afford to let it fire that weapon." The fleet responded instantly, engines roaring to life as battleships shifted into chaotic patterns to avoid being easy targets. The alien vessel, however, seemed undeterred. Its central structure glowed with an ominous intensity, the gathering energy creating visible distortions in space around it. Thorn turned to Kale, his voice tight. "If that thing fires, it'll wipe out everything within range, including us." Kale nodded grimly. "I'm aware." "Suggestions?" Before Thorn could reply, the bridge lights dimmed, and the holographic projection of the Elder Envoy shimmered into view. Its form was dimmer than before, flickering as if on the edge of collapse. "Admiral Kale," the envoy began, its harmonic tones uneven. "The construct's power cannot be matched by force alone. We have studied its design. It is a vessel of annihilation, a relic of a forgotten war, and it will not cease until all it encounters is reduced to silence." Kale's fists tightened. "Then help us stop it. Tell us what you know." The envoy paused, its shifting form conveying hesitation. "There is a way, but it requires a union of our strengths. Your crude technology must work in concert with our harmonics. Alone, neither can succeed." Thorn stepped forward. "What kind of union?" The envoy's voice grew steadier, as if bolstered by resolve. "We will generate a resonance that disrupts its core structure. But the window will be brief, and it will require precise targeting from your weapons to exploit the fracture. Success depends on absolute coordination." Kale exhaled slowly, weighing the risks. She turned to Thorn. "Relay the plan to the fleet. We'll give them what they need." Thorn hesitated for a moment, then nodded, moving to carry out the order. Kale returned her attention to the display, where the alien vessel's energy continued to build. "Envoy," she said, her tone firm, "we'll handle the targeting. Just make sure your part works." The envoy inclined its shimmering head. "We shall do what is necessary." As the elder ships moved into position, their luminescent hulls glowing more brightly, the human fleet began to regroup. Despite the damage they'd sustained, the battered ships formed a cohesive line, their weapons locked onto the alien vessel's critical points. On the Resolute, the tension was palpable, the air heavy with the unspoken weight of what was at stake. The alien ship began to shift, its massive form reorienting to face the combined fleet. Kale's voice cut through the silence. "All ships, hold fire until my command. Trust the elders to do their part." Moments later, the elder ships released a burst of harmonic energy, their haunting song reverberating across the void. The alien vessel hesitated, its glowing core flickering as the resonance disrupted its systems. Kale seized the opportunity. "Now, fire everything we've got." The human fleet unleashed its full arsenal, a storm of plasma, missiles, and kinetic rounds converging on the alien vessel's weakened core. The impact was immediate and devastating. The ship's central structure erupted in a cascade of fire and molten metal, its hull splitting apart as the resonance amplified the damage. A blinding flash consumed the battlefield, and for a moment, everything went still. Then, as the light faded, the alien vessel disintegrated into a cloud of debris, its remains drifting lifelessly into the void. The bridge of the Resolute erupted in a mixture of cheers and exhausted sighs. Kale allowed herself a rare smile, though it was tinged with weariness. She turned to Thorn, who was slumped against a console, his face etched with relief. "Good work, Ambassador," she said. He managed a weak laugh. "I think I'll stick to diplomacy from now on." The holographic envoy reappeared, its form steadier than before. "You have proven your strength," it said, its tone carrying a note of respect. "And we have learned that wisdom must sometimes walk hand in hand with resolve. This cooperation is not without merit." Kale inclined her head. "And you've shown us that even the strongest shield needs more than just firepower. Let's hope this is the start of something better." The envoy's light flickered, its tone softening. "Perhaps, Admiral Kale. But harmony is not achieved in a single moment. It is a path we must walk together." As the transmission ended, Kale turned back to the tactical display, where the debris of the alien ship floated among the stars. The battle was over, but the scars it left behind, on their ships, their people, and their trust, would linger. "Prepare the fleet for departure," she ordered. "We've got a lot to discuss when we get back." As the Resolute's engines hummed to life, Kale allowed herself one last glance at the elder ships. They were already moving away, their graceful forms weaving through the debris as if to reclaim the silence of the void. For the first time, Kale felt a glimmer of hope, not just for humanity, but for a galaxy that might yet find a way to unite its disparate pieces. The stars stretched endlessly before them, each one a beacon of possibility. And though the path ahead was uncertain, it was a path they would walk together.